This video will guide you through printing and previewing reports in CenterPoint. Generating reports is the reason for entering in transactions into CenterPoint. Additionally, the level of detail that you're maintaining the reports by gives your business information it needs to run and manage it successfully. So in this session, we're first going to learn about the organization of reports in the Reports menu. To get to the standard reports within CenterPoint, we're going to go to Reports and Reports. Okay. When we get to the Reports tab, you notice that there's more than one tab there. There's a Reports tab and a Favorites tab. The Reports tab is going to show you a list of all of the reports, and we can let you make modifications to those reports. And even if you don't make modifications to those reports, we are allowing you a place where you can save a list of reports that you're going to use so that you don't have to go through all of our reports, and that's going to be your Favorites tab. The Favorites tab and the organization of the reports on the Favorites tab is discussed in a separate video. When you get to the Reports tab, you're going to see the reports listed in a number of different folders there. And if you click on the plus sign next to those folders, it goes ahead and it opens up those folders, and clicking on the minus sign then collapses the folder. Now, the folders that you see here, don't worry if those don't represent the same folders that you see when you come to reports within CenterPoint, because what folders you see is going to depend on what modules you have installed in CenterPoint. So for example, I have folders here for payroll data reports and payroll tax data reports because I have the payroll module installed. If you don't have that module installed, then you won't have those reports. Additionally, because I happen to be in the agricultural version of CenterPoint right now, I have an area called Production Reports. You would not have those if you have our CenterPoint Accounting or our CenterPoint Fund accounting products. As you open up each one of those sections, you might see some other subfolders there, and then underneath those subfolders, you're going to see different reports. However, in some sections, like under financial statements here, when you open it up, there are a list of reports there, and then there's also some subfolders. So they're just structured a little bit differently. The reports are set into these folders based off of the type of reports they are. For example, reports that are in the transactions folder represent reports that would give you listings of individual transactions. So for example, if I was to bring up a payment journal here for the time period, I'm going to bring it up for this time period here, January 15th to March 23rd, and I'm going to go ahead and click preview on that. And you'll see here that this is representative of individual transactions. So I'm getting a listing of individual transactions. Okay, that's going to be different than reports that are stored within the financial statement section. If I were to bring up an income statement for, I'm going to bring up an income statement for this year to date, for example. So if I come down here and I choose this year to date and go ahead and click OK, it went ahead and changed my periods to January through March. I happen to be in March right now. And if I go ahead and click preview, then the numbers that you see on this report, such as this figure here for sales of corn, represent an accumulation of multiple transactions. So they're just different than those transaction-based report. They're not necessarily representative of a single transaction, but accumulation of transactions, or in the case of a balance sheet, they may be representative of an account balance. Okay, so these are account balances rather than individual transactions. So we've tried to organize the reports into logical sections. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up this section and highlight this report right here. When you highlight a report, down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen here, you're going to see a report description of that report. And that'll be helpful in helping you to determine if this is the report that you need for the information that you're looking for. So you always have that report description there. For finding reports, we have a search bar up at the top of the screen, and that will allow you to search for keywords within the name of the report. So for example, if I was to type in the word cash here, that is going to filter the list of reports for all of those reports that have the word cash in the title somewhere. Okay, I could go further, and if what I'm looking for is cash flow, I can continue to type there, and it'll keep continuing to filter out those reports for what I've typed there. Now, of course, we have to have named the report what you're looking for, something, keywords of what you're looking for. Okay, just clicking on the X there cleared the search, and now I'm back to my full list of reports. Now, there's a couple of different ways to run a report. First off, if you find a report that you're looking for and you want to move it over to your favorites list here. So for example, let's say that I happen to discover this bank register report and I would like to move it over to my favorites list there. I'm going to right click on it, and then I have an option to add it to my favorites list. And I could, when I do that, go ahead and leave it named the bank register, or I could change the name of it on the list. That doesn't change the title of the report. It just changes the name that you see on your list of reports. So let's say that this is one that my accountant wants to see. I could go ahead and call it bank register for accountant, and then click OK. And then that goes over here to my favorites list. Now, how to organize this favorites list is discussed in a separate video on organizing the favorites list there. When I went ahead and saved it as a favorite, any of the selection criteria that is to the right there that was there when I saved it is going to also be defaulted over on the right-hand side. So had I selected a particular company or a particular bank account here in one of these filters before I saved it to my favorites, it would have saved it with that criteria in it. I'm going to go back to the Reports tab. You can also, with the right click, go ahead and send a report directly to the printer. So if you send it to the printer, it will be sending it to your default printer on your computer. So whatever is set as the default printer for that computer will be the printer that it's going to go to. Now, your other option, though, is to go ahead, and it also will send it to the printer with any selections that you have over on the right-hand side for the report. So if you wanted to filter it for, let's say, a particular company and a particular bank account, you want to do that before you send it to print. Otherwise, you won't get the opportunity to go ahead and make that selection. So right click in print just sends it to the printer using whatever criteria is over there on the right. The same thing with the preview. If I go ahead and click preview here, it's going to preview it with whatever items you had in the filter. Okay, so I selected the company of CenterPoint Farms and I selected the bank account of First National Bank. So we see both of those on the report there. But the difference with the preview is the preview on the left-hand side over here has a tab for filters where I can then once again come over here. And if let's say that I chose the wrong filter and I needed to have a different company or a different bank account and I wanted to see my line of credit account instead of my bank account, I could change that here and then click the refresh button here at the bottom and I would see the change in the report. Okay, so now it's just showing me activity to that line of credit account. Okay, so when you choose it from the right click, it's going to choose it with whatever selection criteria you have over there on the right-hand side. Okay, now you could also go ahead and choose buttons down here at the bottom. So once again, if I highlight the bank register report and I click the print button at the bottom right-hand side of the screen down here, You would also go ahead and send that to your default printer, and it would choose it to print it with the whatever criteria is over here in your report selections area on the right-hand side. Okay, so I can also highlight the report and click the preview button, which would take us to the same preview that we just saw. And again, if I want to go to the filter and change any of the criteria, like set this back to my First National Bank bank account, I can go ahead and make that change and then click refresh again. And so I can see that on the preview. I also get a button over here for exporting a report. All of our reports can be exported to either an Excel file, an older version of Excel from 1997 to 2003, which is an XLS file, a PDF file, or a CSV file, which is a comma separated value file. Okay, we can also do the export from the preview screen. So we're going to see that preview screen here in just a second. I'm going to change reports here. I'm going to collapse up the reports. One of the things that you can do when you're on this reports menu, if you've expanded a bunch of reports out and you want to collapse them all, you could either collapse them individually by going ahead and clicking on the minus sign, or you can right click on the screen and choose to collapse all of the groups, and it'll collapse it all back up. Right click will also allow you to expand all of the groups, which would expand all of the reports out and leave you with a tree of reports out there. But as you can see, there's quite a few reports in the system, so that could be quite a long list of reports. I'm going to right click and collapse them all again. And I'm going to move down to financial statements and highlight the income statement. So like I said, before you go ahead and print a report, you should go ahead and select your parameters for that report over here on the right-hand side for report selections. Now, the video on customizing reports goes a little bit deeper into how do you go ahead and make your filter selections. Okay, but a few filters that are always on every report is you do have the ability to filter each of the reports as with a option over here on the left-hand side. So you can go ahead and quickly choose a date range. Like for example, if I was to go ahead and choose this year, it would leave me with a date range expanded from January to December. And if I click OK, you see that's going to be from January 1st to December 31st. So every time I'm on a financial statement like that, where I'm picking periods, it's always from the first of that month to the end of that month. And that's going to be a little bit different than if I'm picking date ranges on a transaction report. So earlier I had the payments journal up there where you saw that I went ahead and chose a date range of January 15th through March 23rd. And I did that by just clicking. I could either do that by typing in the dates or by clicking on the calendar and just choosing that specific time period. When you choose a time period other than one of these drop-down options, it changes that drop-down option to custom. So you don't have to do both. The system will automatically recognize that you've chosen a custom date range and change that to custom automatically. So you don't have to change it to custom first. Okay, so transaction reports can go from specific days, whereas financial statements down here is always a period. So we're choosing the entire period. Okay, so then the other thing that is always, the other filter that is always on every report is the ability to filter for a specific company, or if you happen to be using our fund accounting product, the company is equal to a fund. So you can always filter for one or more funds. So if I wanted to run this report for just my CenterPoint Farm Company and not my CenterPoint Orchard Company, I would move it to the right. Okay, now every report is going to have certain filters here. So these are the filters that might be defaulted for the income statement, but if I go back up to the payments journal, you see that it has different filters available for it. Now, sometimes there might be things that you want to filter the report by that aren't on your list of filters here. For example, if I wanted to filter this income statement for all of the activity to a particular project, and I wanted to add the project as one of the filter items here, then I would click on the More Items button. The More Items button at the top is going to show you all of the items that have already been added to the filter. Okay, but it also leaves you with a list of items that have no check mark in them. And in this case, one of those items happens to be the project. And if I wanted to filter this income statement for a particular project, I would want to add that filter there. So if I do that, if I put a check mark in it and click OK, we're now going to have the ability over here to go ahead and filter for a project. Well, I don't really have any projects set up, but I wanted to show you how you could add additional filters. The More Items button also allows you to control the order in which those appear. For example, if I would like my company up right underneath the period, I could highlight it and then use the arrow keys to move it up on the screen, and then it would be listed there. Okay, and that setting becomes a default setting then for your computer. If you happen to be like on a network or a standalone computer, it would be for your computer. Or if you happen to be in our cloud, it would be for your individual cloud login. So each person could have their own settings. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and preview that income statement then. And when you're in the preview screen, there is a toolbar up at the top, and I want to talk about that preview toolbar. Okay, the preview toolbar allows you to view a report in two different layouts. You could do it in a print layout or a interactive layout. If I go to print layout, you're going to notice that it shows the report as 4 pages long. Okay, the print layout is always going to show you what this is going to look like when it's printed. Whereas interactive layout has some of its own features, but you notice that the number of pages is different. That is not going to be the number of pages it is when it prints. If you really want to see the number of pages it is when it prints, you want to make sure that you go to the print layout. Okay, but interactive layout does have some different functionality that is valuable. The interactive layout lets you take, and notice that normally my icon, my arrow key for my mouse is an arrow. Okay, and usually if I go ahead and hover over an amount, if I'm in interactive layout, it'll change that icon to a finger pointing. And then I can click on that figure and it will go ahead, and because I'm not on a transaction-based report, it runs another report which is going to show me all of the transactions that made up that number. And if this report then is also in interactive mode, then if I wanted to, I could click on an individual transaction and it would let me drill down to see the transaction. It also lets me have the capability of editing that transaction and saving the changes and or deleting the transaction. Okay, so I do have the ability to just drill down even to editing it. So this was a report that was not individual transactions. If it was a report that was individual transactions, then the drill down would take you right into the editing of the transaction. Okay, the other thing that the interactive mode does is you'll notice here on your toolbar up at the top of the report that there is a little box here with the word find next to it. And that would allow me to go ahead and type something into that box. Like let's say I wanted to find where the word co-op is on the report. I could type co-op in and click the find, and then it'll position itself where the first time it finds the word co-op. And then I could click next and it would position it to the next time that it found that word. And I could keep continuing to do that until it's exhausted the amount of times that it finds that on the report. Now that's only available in the interactive mode. So I'm going to take that co-op out of there, but that find is only available in interactive mode. Now sometimes you'll come to the report preview and you'll get a little tip that comes up. I'll see here if I could bring back up that tip. Okay, I'm going to close the report and come back in. I'm just going to close it and go to preview. And you'll notice that this little tip comes up over here. Okay, that tip is might be helpful for when you're first using the reports, but after you've been using them for a while, you probably want to turn it off. And that's what this little toggle button is for. If I click on it again, it'll go ahead and turn that off. Okay, these arrow buttons let you move forward one page at a time or backward one page at a time. The arrow button to the right with the line through it will take you to the last page. The arrow button to the left with the line in it will take you back to the first page. Okay, the refresh button is often used if you change any of the filters. We talked about that already, that you can go to this tab over here to change the filter. And then if you click either the refresh at the bottom of that tab or the refresh up at the top of the screen, you'll see the changes that you made. There are also additional tabs here under General, Header, Columns, Grouping, and Footer that allow you to make changes to the reports. Those are discussed in the video on customizing reports. Okay, the refresh button then will be used to go ahead and see the changes that you made. To save a report to your favorites list, you can go ahead and click on the star button at the top, and it will allow you to save the reports to your favorites list. Okay, so you can go ahead and give the report a different name. So I'm just going to call this income statement from training and click OK, and that'll add it to my favorites list by that name. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the preview of that report again. Okay, these two buttons that come after the star button allow you to add report figures from your report to your dashboard. Those again are discussed in a separate video. The print button on the toolbar, if I click this first print button, will send my report to my default printer, and it doesn't ask you anything about which printer you want to go to, what number of pages you want, how many copies, or anything like that. It just sends it to your default printer. Where the button to the right of it gives you a little bit more control. When I go ahead and click on that button, it allows me to choose which printer I want to send it to. It also allows me to choose the number of pages that I want to print. So if I only wanted to print like the first 2 pages, for example, I could say 1 through 2. Or it also, I'm going to go back to all though on mine, and then it also allows you to change the number of copies you want of that particular report. And for the printer that you've highlighted, if you go to the preferences screen, it allows you to go ahead and change some of the preferences of that printer. It'll even allow you to, sometimes with different printer drivers, allow you to change it so that it prints on both the front and back of the printer. Okay, so that allows you to get into the printer preferences there. I'm going to click cancel on that. To the right of that button is the button to export the report. We saw the export button before we went ahead and previewed the report, but if you're already in a preview, you can still send it out to an export in those same formats. To the right of the export button is a button that changes how you're viewing the report on the screen. So I can change this to 200% and it makes the report a lot bigger, but I see less of the report. So very commonly the settings that people would use here would be page width, and they would see a lot of the report and mostly, you know, how it would appear 1 page wide. They might change it to whole page to see what the whole page looks like, but it makes it kind of small and you can't really see a lot. So the more common things are either page width or 100% or even 150%. So those are the most common settings for that. Okay, now to close out of a preview, you would either click on the close button on the toolbar there, or you could click this X in the top right corner of the report there. But be careful not to click the X at the very top that turns red there, because that would take and close you out of the whole program. So I try to get into a habit actually of hitting the close on the toolbar rather than hitting the X, just so I don't accidentally hit the wrong one. So I'm going to go ahead and click close on that. And that is how to go ahead and print or preview reports in CenterPoint.